Hi everyone. Today I want to talk about another recent Blu-ray release here in 2023. This is a recent Kino Lorber release of The Truth About Spring, starring Hayley Mills, John Mills, and James MacArthur. And it is a film that's set mostly aboard a ship, or a schooner rather, that's sailing through the Caribbean in search of treasure. Now, this is actually filmed in the Costa Brava of Spain, but it is a sun-drenched movie. And I was very much in the mood for a sun-drenched movie because here in central New Jersey, we have had one gloomy, rainy day after another. It's been chilly. It's chilly again today. So I needed a reminder that summer is on its way. And the second reason why I was in the mood for this is this past weekend I saw two films back-to-back that were directed by Lars von Trier from the recent Criterion release of his Europe trilogy. And that was so oppressive, made it seems by a madman, and that madness and oppressiveness, I had to shed it away. And there's no better movie, I think, to get back to what commercial films are like in The Truth About Spring. So this is a story about a crusty old tar who is sailing the Caribbean with his now 18-year-old daughter, who he has brought up aboard this schooner. And she's gotten a good education. He really does care about her. Her mother has passed away a few years prior, so he's educated her. She can read, but she knows how to sail, and very much a tomboy. And she has no room in her life for boys. But she's now 18, so perhaps that might be changing, because they are part of their job, as it were, is to beg food and supplies from cruise ships. So they'll sail right up close to a cruise ship. They claim they have no water. They take them on board. Of course, the passengers are all enthralled with this little girl and her father that look like they're in dire need. So they get their supplies that way, but they have a lot. They actually have a whole storehouse of supplies. So they go to an island where there's a cave where they store all their goods. But their basic goal is to search for treasure, and so Hayley Mills is playing the girl on board this ship, and she is called Spring. So even though it's not spring, this is definitely summer. And then her father, played by John Mills, Hayley Mills' real life father, has a map, and one particular map. He's got a bunch of them, but he's got one particular map: sunken vessel. Gold and riches aboard. He and his daughter will become rich. But there's some impediments to that, because this crusty old seaman, he has friends / enemies. Sometimes they're on the same side, sometimes they're not, and he may need them to be on their side for a while in order to investigate this sunken vessel. But you never know whether they're friends or whether they're enemies. And the two main villains in the piece, as it were, are played by Lionel Jeffries and Harry Andrews, and they just steal up the scenery. And I thought they were very funny. And here you see this is Hayley Mills as Spring aboard ship, and here is John Mills with that's Lionel Jeffries. And Mills and Jeffries were the best of friends in real life, so they had a ball making this movie. But there's another element to this story. That's sort of the Robert Louis Stevenson Treasure Island kind of story, but then there's the sort of the Cinderella story, because when Spring and her father go to the island where their storehouse is, there's a beautiful, huge yacht moored nearby. And aboard ship is a very rich man and his nephew. They're the only two passengers aboard this fantastic yacht, except for the crewman. And the nephew, who is a recent graduate from a law school, and he's on his last vacation, or his summer vacation before he has to go to work. He's going to be a Philadelphia lawyer. That was a big thing in those days. That was the lawyer to get, a Philadelphia lawyer. But he's bored. He sees this schooner, and he's curious. He rows over, and he takes they take a liking to each other. Now, Spring maybe not so much, because she doesn't like boys. But we soon sense, well, that may be just a facade. But he wants an adventure. He goes on the adventure with him, the treasure hunting adventure. So here's the Cinderella story. So there's very good scenes between both Hayley Mills and James McArthur. They had worked together before in a movie. But the real good scenes are really the ones between Hayley and her father, Spring and her father in the film. These have an element of truthfulness to it. There's a real father-daughter experience going on here, and some of this comes from the fact that John Mills really guided his daughter's career. He picked out the roles that she would play, and this one in particular. Now, Hayley Mills was at the point where she was, the character she's playing is 18, and Hayley Mills herself had just turned 18 when they filmed this. So she was kind of chafing at the bit because her father and her mother had been very controlling of her career and her personal life. And the times were changing, the Beatles, and there was a new kind of sense of freedom, and she wanted to participate in this. But she was also very anxious because her previous film was The Chalk Garden, and that was the first movie she had made where she got bad reviews. And as a young actress who had a lot of anxiety about whether her career would go on or not, they were devastating to her. Even though I think she's very good in the Chalk Garden, she was up against Deborah Kerr, a real powerhouse actress, in a straight dramatic role. Hayley Mills was playing a troubled teen. Her father was also in that film. I think they made 3 films together. So I think this is a really good film for Hayley Mills, and especially in that kind of transition, because we actually see the transition of the character of Spring becoming a woman, and this sort of mirrored the experiences that Hayley Mills and the anxiety about going from teenager to young adult, both as a person and as a career, as an actress. And you can't underemphasize what a big star Hayley Mills was in the early 1960s. She had a 5-film contract with Walt Disney. The first 2, Pollyanna and The Parent Trap, were huge hits. The other 3 movies he made with Walt Disney were also big box office successes. And she had this. She usually did play a sort of tomboyish kind of character. She was very lively, very feisty, very intelligent. She had a great deal of empathy. She was a very good actress, and one of the best childhood actresses probably in movie history. But she never got a chance to really make a film with a great director. Now, I talked about a movie, Rebel Without a Cause, a couple weeks ago, in which Natalie Wood faced a similar transition from child star to adult actress, and although she wasn't as big a child star as Hayley Mills was, she was certainly a star. And she, in The Rebel Without a Cause, she worked very closely with the director Nicholas Ray, and a couple years later she would work with Elia Kazan on Splendor in the Grass. So she had a good foundation in her transition, and she did indeed become a much bigger movie star as an adult than she was as a child. So, but it was a very difficult thing, and Hayley Mills has gone on to have a very successful career, certainly in film and television. Was she in Saved by the Bell, I think, perhaps other television shows, and shows as well, and on stage. And There is a really excellent commentary in The Truth About Spring in this keynote release. Gary Girani. I don't think I've ever heard a commentary by him before, but he is so well prepared, and it does take a little bit of time to get used to the rhythm of his speech, because he doesn't pause too much, but he's got a lot to say, and I really applaud these kind of commentaries where the commentator really puts a lot of effort into the research. I mean, he knew everything. He knew everything about the book. The book was written in 1921. Henry Stackpole, I think, is the name of the writer. Best-selling novel that was made into a silent film in the mid-1920s, a lost film. So he compares the book that probably nobody else in the world today has ever read. He compares it to the movie adaptation in very interesting ways, and talks a lot about Hayley Mills's career. He quotes from her memoir, which I picked up at the library a couple days. This came out, I think, in 2021, Forever Young, Hayley Mills, the memoir. And I did read the sections that apply to The Truth About Spring. He has a lot of, has a lot of knowledge about Hayley Mills's career. And at one point, she had been offered, he claims she was offered the role of Lolita in Stanley Kubrick's movie adaptation of the infamous novel. But her father, Hayley Mills's father, John Mills, put the kibosh on that. He said, there's no way. How are you ever going to go back to making Disney movies when you've played that kind of part? But evidently in the book, Hayley Mills regrets that. It's the one regret about her career, that she did not take that role, which may well have changed the course of her career. But he also says at the end of his commentary that Hayley Mills knew about this new Blu-ray release of The Truth About Spring, knew about the commentary. Evidently, he must be a friend of Hayley Mills's. And so that was kind of nice, because anybody who grew up in that time period when Hayley Mills was a big star, as I was, you really have a very special spot for her. She was a part of your childhood, and she had a luminosity to her, and she made a lot of good films. Whistle Down the Wind and Tiger Bay, two of her non-Disney films from this early period, are outstanding films, but they're not out on Blu-ray, so hopefully someday. So overall, I enjoyed this film. It's not a classic. John Mills thought it was a dreadful movie. There's no way in the world this is a dreadful movie. It's beautiful to look at, with some very good character actors. I didn't talk about James McArthur much. Of course, he had been in Disney movies too, and had appeared in a previous movie with John Mills, but most people know him from Hawaii Five-0, Dano, Bookham Dano. So there's a lot of interesting things here. The director, I didn't mention him either, Richard Thorpe. He's made, I don't know, 150, 180 movies in his career. Who knows? And even the most devout cinephile probably doesn't know who Richard Thorpe was. I know the name, but I wouldn't have been able to name one film he made. Looking over his filmography, he, I guess, The Knights of the Round Table, Ivanhoe from the early 50s. He was an MGM contract director. Louis B. Mayer knew that if he put him on, he wouldn't give him the prestige movies, but he gave him movies that he needed to be made quickly. That was something Thorpe could do. One thing you find in Truth About Spring is lots of close-ups, and I guess Thorpe was renowned for these close-ups. They're not only a lot of close-ups, but he stays with them for a long time. Luckily, with this sun-drenched and a very good makeup artist, these close-ups are really quite good and compelling, and actors as well. Okay, so thanks a lot for everybody who managed to listen. I do appreciate it. Comments are welcome. Take care.